Hello, Abigail here with the astrology for this week. And this week, it's a great migration. All of the rest of the personal planets, because Venus has already gone into Aquarius, and the Sun are going to be moving into Aquarius. And so the energy is shifting. Remember, it is Saturn sign to Saturn sign, but these Saturn signs are very distinctly different. Capricorn tends to be a little more internal, it's a little more focused on what is immediately around us and what we can get our hands on and what we can transmute from the unknown into the known. And the Aquarian energy is much more populous. It is about groups instead of smaller groups, which is very much Capricorn energy. Um, it is about the collective, not to mention, as these planets are heading into Aquarius, they are immediately meeting Pluto. And so this is a week of really deep, intense energies. Also, this is the final little moment when Saturn and Neptune get finally aspected with a sextile as the signs move through the later degrees of Capricorn into Aquarius. And so this is very much a goodbye. It is a facing of the shadow self. Like I said, I don't usually focus on mundane astrology, but I will say that this is a continuation of the intensity we've been feeling. Also, the personal planets are still under the sun's rays, or combust, depending on their distance, which is a traditional medieval astrological term for when a planet is not within 1 degree of the sun, but it is close. And so it causes like a blinding effect and a blurring of the lines and an inability to connect to these personal topics, such as Martian topics of drive and passion and knowing the direction you're going in. Your visibility is going to be kind of shuttered, and it's a little tricky, especially as we're heading into kind of the darkness of Pluto. We don't really get to see on the outside of things. So just know that there is a limitation of vision in a lot of these moments. It is going to feel like a lot. Like I said, because of the proximity to the planets, to the sun, we have this kind of built-in intensity without clarity. Bright side, however, heading into middle of the week, we do get the Mercury Cazimi, which is heart of the sun, and so we get this moment of light and perception and understanding. So it's not all blurry, it's not all kind of isolated and unable to kind of see our surroundings, but it is this feeling of containment. It is this feeling of like, I can't really get a grip on what's going on because of the proximity to self. So just keep that in mind as we head through this astrology. Starting off, Venus Pluto conjunction. This is going to pull up the darkest and most intense themes of our relationships, of our connection to others, how we interact with, because we're Aquarius, not just our interpersonal and close loving connections, but also, each phase of connection. So like our intimate connections, our communal connections, our like city connection, our state connection if you live in the US or province, your connection as a country, your connection to the greater world and the globe. And so we get this moment on the bright side because I see from my perspective, I see the zodiac as contained signs. Venus in this moment does get a bit of a break from the sun until the sun later that day comes into Aquarius, and then it's back back in combustion. But for this moment, we do get a bit more clarity, and I think you're going to really know who is for you in this moment. I think also a lot of kind of ancestral and historical issues are going to come to the surface. Venus and Pluto deals with things like obsession and addiction and this need to kind of endlessly consume energy in our relationships. And it's not bad to consume a certain level of energy, but we have to understand that, every relationship is finite, and absolutely people should be meeting needs and connecting, but no one person can feed all of us. No one person can meet every single one of our needs. And that is why community and connection and care and having a network of support is important. And this is coming from someone who doesn't always have the strongest network because I don't really have family. So that's also going to come up. If you have a lack in your relationships that is highlighted, this can also be a very hopeless aspect, but within this feeling of loss and lack, there can also be the recognition of where people have and do show up for you. There can also be this understanding that there is care and connection, even if you don't feel it currently. Um, I personally think that a lot of people are going to be connecting more with their community rather than with maybe their close personal connections, or connecting more with strangers during this moment of being like, wow, some of my personal connections really, we don't have alignment on our passions and our belief systems, and seeing neighbors and other community members out in the world and being like, oh, I don't know them, but these are people that I align with, and starting to create relationships that way. It will take time because we are dealing with Pluto, but this is a shift, especially since Pluto moved officially into Aquarius last year, honestly around this time. You know, this is a shift from seeing, well, honestly, the nuclear family as this, and this is just Pluto and Aquarius, the nuclear family as our only basis for connection, and being like, oh, I can make family anywhere, but there is a grieving process of recognizing that maybe your family isn't as cohesive or ancestrally healed as you might like. Doesn't mean that we're getting rid of family. Oops, I kind of did something. Doesn't mean that we're getting rid of family. Doesn't mean that we're ending all relationships. It's just recognizing where our needs are not being met and where we can go and get them met, and how we might, not might, we need to diversify our connections. We need to diversify our definition of family. We need to diversify our definition of care and move forward accordingly. Now, this is going to take time because Pluto doesn't move very fast. But as we progressively move through the signs with Venus throughout this year, especially when we get to the opposition when Venus gets into Leo in the summer, you know, I think there is a shift that is going to be happening overall. Oh, my little vine, sorry. So just keep an eye out for that. I know I got long-winded on this one, but this one's a really important one that is going to continue throughout the year, very obviously. So just track of all those Pluto-Venus aspects this year. Then we have Mars sextile Saturn. This is our final sextile with Saturn before it goes into Aries, and also the last aspect. Because by the time the planets make it around, we will already have been shifted. And this is a dialogue about how we can take our lessons from Pisces, our lessons of kind of the dissolving of structures into the unknown. Saturn in Pisces is very AI. A lot of the last time, 28 years ago, Saturn was in Pisces, we had a lot of innovation when it came to video games and electronics and cell phones. And now we're kind of getting to the next stage of that. And you can see that in what's happening in the world. And also in our personal lives, like, what are the structures that we thought that looked so great on the outside, that in the very depths of that structure, very Pisces, it was not secure. And we have seen those things crumble depending on what house Pisces is for you. And so this is that final dialogue with Mars about how we can take action moving forward, how we can adjust, also how we can deepen our perception of the structures we exist in. Because Saturn kind of breaks down the fairy tale in Pisces. How can we enjoy and participate in things without having to fantasize and create illusion in order to make it real? And there's nothing wrong with illusion and fantasy, but you do need to know what the difference is. And that is what Mars is asking. How do you dig down? How do you sink your teeth into something if it's not real? And if it's not real, then how can you find something that is real to really get involved in and get connected to in that part of your chart? For instance, Saturn is in my 7th. How can I participate in relationships without putting the best possible face on them, and seeing them for what they are, and being able to work through and participate in them without having to have a facade, because those relationships aren't stable anyways. So that's a 7th house situation. If you have the 10th house, your work and your idea around career and those kind of legacy structures, how that's kind of fallen apart. You can go by each house and discuss this, but that's definitely what's coming up there. And then also Mars trine Uranus right after. So while we're having this discussion about how we can activate real and activate living in, and by real, I mean material, technically. I don't really believe in real and unreal. I believe in seen and unseen. How we can participate in the seen, and how we can take dream and fantasy and use it as a building block rather than as a facade to cover up what's not working and functioning. And with Mars trine Uranus retrograde, we also get to look at things that haven't worked out, look at innovations that have made things more difficult. AI is a good example. Looking at the ways in which we have changed and transformed in these parts of our chart and see where we get to go next. And also, where we get to go next is into Gemini. So a whole new window is opening up. This week really feels like a portal. It also feels very much like an intense lead up to the eclipses, because we have an eclipse in Aquarius season. So even though it's at the end of Aquarius season, we are building towards that. And then, of course, the sun goes into Aquarius at the end of this day. And we're into an eclipse season. Like I said, it is going to take a little longer because we have an eclipse on one axis and an eclipse on the other. But in this moment, and with how the energy has been moving, we are very much already kind of headed into the eclipse portal by the time we hit the sun into Aquarius. And this is all very colored by Pluto. It's very colored by the fact that we are no longer aspecting, Neptune and all of those Neptune and Saturn. And, we are also eventually going to go into that square with Uranus. And so it is going to be and this is going to be the way it's going to be until, in like 20 years, Pluto goes into a different sign. It is going to be heavier. It is going to be deeper. We are going to be battling against social issues and injustice and fighting for collective rights. That's how Aquarius works, and the structures that are making it impossible to get that liberation. So just know that that's the vibe of Aquarius season. It's always kind of the vibe, but with Pluto there now for a hot minute, it is going to continue to be that vibe every time we hit January, mid-January. Then Tuesday, we have Mercury sextile Neptune, another one of those moments where we get to like participate in all of this energy. And in this moment, it is this encouragement to dream. It is an encouragement to believe in what is unseen and what we can transmute, and to find comfort in the fluency of art and poetry and music, and really taking our ability to transmute in Capricorn and pulling out the magic of Pisces. And so this is a really beautiful day for manifestation. This is a beautiful day for creating something, for believing in something better. It's also the 29th degree, so you might have been waiting for an idea, and that idea is coming. Now, I do think that idea will like fully manifest on the Cazimi, which is the next day. But this is a beautiful moment of like transformation and just like that and this is what happens with Pisces and Neptune, this indescribable creativity and flow. This is also a great time to channel psychically, so keep that in mind. Then Mercury goes into Aquarius, and we're headed into much faster energy. Mercury doesn't have any like technical debility or exaltation in this sign, so it's kind of neutral, chilling. But it is in an air sign, so there is a measure of fluency even with the kind of restrictions of Saturn. But this is a very fast moving but structured energy, and so this is a great time to plan and to build. It's also a good time to get a grip on your money, because in Aquarius we get a little more bite into the flights of fancy, and we get to build complex structures, and Mercury in there is really a good problem solver. Then we move into Wednesday. Thank God. We have a Mercury Cazimi. This is when Mercury is within a degree of the sun. We get this moment of clarity and revelation. I find that some really beautiful things happen on Mercury Cazimis. I am also Mercury ruled, and so Mercury Cazimi days. I also have an 8th house Mercury, so Mercury Cazimi days, I shouldn't say that they're beautiful. They are. Mercury Cazimi days, for Mercury ruled people and not, for me, are days of fateful clarity. Sometimes that fate is tricky and brings us many lessons and is very preordained feeling. And then sometimes that fate is like a magical little tiny connection that brings us hope. There is this dynamism when we come in here with Mercury. And so I really, encourage you, especially considering what we're going through as a collective in the US, in the world, to really take this day to enjoy and transmute energy and to ask for messages from spirit and to do energetic work and to really kind of dig back into the essentials of us and to kind of ground back into the parts of ourselves that know. There are the parts of ourselves that don't know. This is a very unstable time. Most times are unstable, it just depends on who you are. But this is a very unstable time for a lot of people. And this is a day to go back to that inner knowing, to go listen to intuition, to connect to your spirits and your guides and your ancestors, and to get messages from them, because it is a clear sky for those deliveries. So really mark Wednesday on your calendar. Then we move on to Thursday. Mercury conjunct Pluto. We've just had this cazimi. This also means the sun is not far behind. That cazimi, because of its proximity, is also going to bring us some hard truths. It's also going to bring us some revelations about the depths of things. It is also going to tell us some hard truths about ourselves, especially with the adjacency of the sun. It's also a moment this whole week is a moment to reconnect to your magic, to reconnect to your language, to reconnect to your expression. And in Pluto conjunction with Mercury, there is a rawness and a aggression that is also deeply beautiful in a painful way. So speaking from the heart, sharing what you believe in, being firm in your convictions, also recognizing past patterns of harm, either people projecting on you or you projecting onto others. There's so much blinding clarity. I do think the major action is taking place this week. You need to know that on the world stage. I know it's already been happening, but things are going to uptick and things are going to get bigger and louder. So buckle up, especially if you live where I live currently, in Minnesota. So even if you don't live here, this is the day to connect to community. This is the day to tap in and start to stand up for what is right, even if you haven't been. This is also a day that will, in the very least, show you who people are if you need to confront people. I would suggest confronting people on the Mercury cazimi. I would also suggest confronting people on the next day, which is the Mercury conjunction with Pluto. It is a time when a lot of things will be revealed. If you think someone is not telling you the truth, this is the day to have that conversation. No, it doesn't mean that the conversation is going to work out well, but it means that you will get the information that you need with the depth that you need in order to make more, in order to make wise and comprehensive steps moving forward. I will say, wait until the conjunction breaks so that you have a little bit more control on your emotions, because this Pluto conjunctions can really mess with our emotional, our ability to speak tenderly. If you want to rip off the band-aid, this is a great day for it, but I would wait maybe till the weekend to start communicating the things that you have learned. But this is a great day to confront someone, especially if you struggle with advocating for yourself. You will have the power of Pluto behind you. It can also bring fear around communication. I don't want to miss out on that. But if you are ready to make change, fear is just a reason to extract yourself from a situation. We also have Mars sextile Neptune on this day, and so we are dealing with what you might experience some nightmares, to be honest, but also how to take our energy and our magic to harness it for things. All of these energies can be used in different ways, as we see on the daily with our leaders. But also you can take these energies, knowing that they are difficult. Mars sextile Neptune can be a little slippery, and take them to activate them for something you want. Mars sextile Neptune can be a bit of aggression and can be anxiety and fears about stuff, but it can also be how you want to take your magic and your energy and use it for something productive. And because it's in a sextile, there is this functionality in there, which I love. And so taking your anger and your rage and applying it appropriately. Great day to hex someone, FYI, or a group, or a public person, if you get my drift. Then we also have Sun conjunct Pluto right after this is all happening Thursday. And we are really being pulled in to our deepest fears around ourselves, our fears around our limitations, our fears around our sense of self, ancestral fears that live in our bodies. If you come from a line of people who have been historically oppressed, a day like today is really hard, because that ancestral trauma, and that the way that trauma affects DNA and affects people groups, that hits heavy on Sun Pluto conjunctions, especially with Mercury right next door. And so this is a time to honor your ancestors and their struggle if that is something that you have in your lineage. This is a time to honor yourself and how far you have come in spite of what you're feeling and struggling with on this day. You know, so many fears about doing the right thing and moving forward confidently can come up when we're in a Pluto conjunction, because it just becomes overwhelming. It becomes too much. Pluto stuff is too much, but if you can sit in it, even if you are curled up under your covers hiding, but if you can sit in it and take what you need, there is a lot of magic and transformation in Pluto. You just have to recognize what it is going to bring up. And it is going to bring up pain, it is going to bring up loss, it is going to bring up, you know, if you haven't reached a place you felt you would at this time in your life, it can bring up a feeling of being finite, as being like, I'm running out of time, I don't have enough time. So just know that these Pluto conjunctions, while transformative, are also anxiety inducing. So be gentle with yourself, and also know we're heading into these eclipses. All of this energy is about to be transmuted. So do what you can to help yourself progress, do what you can to care for yourself, but do not push yourself over the edge to make something happen, because the eclipses are coming in hot and they are going to take stuff and launch those babies into the next steps. And so you just need to process what you need to process now, taking care of who you need to process now, especially with these all in Aquarius, connecting with your neighbors, connecting with the groups in your area, finding support in these moments to find an antidote to this, which is collective care. And if you're like me and you're disabled and it's really hard, you can still, it's not as fun, but you can still participate vicariously. You can still find groups online. You can still invite people over, possibly, depending on what you have and your restrictions, you know. And so I would encourage you to do that. This is also a great time to reach out to someone you haven't talked to in a while. That has always been a great support. You know, Pluto kind of pulls up people who are kind of out of sight, out of mind. But yeah, this is a time to really sit with and process, because the universe is about to take us all on a ride. And so I don't want you to feel pressured to change all the time, because the change is coming, whether we want it to or not. And this is about preparing and clearing the way so that it goes as smoothly as possible and we don't get as much whiplash. Then on Friday, we have Mars moving into Aquarius as our last kind of event of the week. The weekend is quieter in the sense that we're not actively having something like happen all the time. Those, you know, they're still playing out. But I do want to, I'm looking at my notes. I do want to remind you that we kick off next week with Neptune's reentrance into Aries. So take that weekend to relax as much as you can, to get quiet. Also, with Mars entering Aquarius, this is the movement and the rage of populations. This is collective motion. It doesn't shock me that a general strike is being called in the state of MN on the day Mars goes into Aquarius. Participate as you will and as you can. I do think we're using the term general strike loosely. It's more of a walkout, because it doesn't sound like it's lasting longer than a day. It's not a criticism, it's just language is important. But Mars moving into Aquarius, as groups, it is going to be easier to activate. It is going to be easier to connect. Now, yes, you have to put in the work because Saturn is involved, but it is work that is now facilitated by Mars. So take hope and know that if you're feeling drained now, there is a punch of energy at the end of the weekend where it's going to feel easier to connect with others and to bring yourself together. Partially because we're coming up on a Pluto Mars conjunction next week. And rage is going to be very important. So start unshackling that anchor. Start releasing the parts of yourself that you repress in order to be acceptable, because the time for being acceptable is over. Pluto is in Aquarius. We are moving through this energy at lightning speed. It is the time to be authentic. It is the time to be committed to your values and your beliefs. And it is a time to stand on business in whatever way you can, within your own functionality, within your own ability. Anyways, my loves, that is my reading for this week. I wish you a blessed week. I will say this week is one of a series of weeks. We've been in this is our third one so far. where we need to be gentle with ourselves. It is better to allow ourselves to process and flow than to force ourselves into things at this point. Um, yes, my phone keeps doing things. Sorry. And I keep batting my little ivy that I took off of construction in New York. Um, I felt like they need to be here today. They've also been losing some leaves, so I think a lot of my plants are missing out on. I usually talk to them, and I've not been talking to them enough. Anyways, sorry for my ADHD jump. Anyways, take care of yourselves. Recognize that this is an energetically draining week, so hydrate, rest when you can. Don't push yourself. If you're feeling like you cannot do something, then get it rain check, push it back, do it online versus in person. Um, Activate and participate as you can, because we got to do this for the long haul, and everyone has a role and every role is important. You just have to pick one. Anyways, that is all. I wish you a blessed, restful week. Take this slowly. Recognize that this is big, big, big energy, and there's a lot of ancestral stuff happening on top of all this. So yeah, connecting to your ancestors would be a good idea, and I will see you later.